No one in Maplebrook Estates had ever witnessed a luxury SUV slowly sinking into someone's front yard. And certainly, no one expected the HOA president to be standing right beside it when it happened on a peaceful Saturday morning. Daniel Reeves stepped out onto his porch holding his morning coffee, expecting nothing more than birds chirping and a calm stretch of sunlight. Instead, he stopped cold. Sitting squarely on his lawn was a glossy black SUV, immaculate, oversized, and completely out of place. Standing behind it was Cynthia Hargrove, the HOA president, clipboard in hand, sunglasses set firmly like armor across her face. She wasn't there for a visit. She was conducting an inspection. Daniel had already received 3 notices that week regarding the height of his grass. He had cut it the very same day. Still, there she was, parked deep onto his lawn as if it belonged to her. Neighbors slowed their walks, sensing something unusual in the air. Cynthia tapped her pen against the clipboard and declared that he was once again in violation. Daniel stayed composed. He politely asked if she could move her vehicle off his property. She didn't. Instead, she began quoting regulations. What she didn't realize, what no one in that quiet neighborhood knew, was that Daniel had spent the past month preparing for moments exactly like this. And beneath the soft earth under her tires, something was waiting. Daniel had moved to Maplebrook Estates looking for peace, not conflict. But with each passing week, the rules seemed to tighten. First came warnings about the shade of his mailbox paint, then about the cleanliness of his driveway edges, then even the position of his trash bin. Every notice bore Cynthia Hargrove's signature, whose reputation for control was quietly discussed at block parties, but never openly challenged. Daniel had tried to comply. He repainted. He trimmed. He adjusted. Still, the citations continued. What bothered him most was the inconsistency. Other lawns were left untouched, driveways cracked, fences leaning. Yet Cynthia's focus never strayed from his property. That morning, when she parked on his lawn, it felt less like enforcement and more like a show of control. He stepped closer, keeping his tone measured. The ground beneath the tires appeared darker than the rest of the grass. "Please move your vehicle," he said again. Cynthia let out a loud sigh, as though dealing with something unreasonable. She explained that HOA authority permitted inspections whenever necessary. A few neighbors lingered near the sidewalk, pretending to scroll through their phones. Daniel glanced again at the ground beneath the SUV. He had told the landscaping company to leave that section untouched because beneath the grass, hidden under newly laid soil, was an old drainage cavity from a long-abandoned irrigation system. Soft ground, unstable ground, and Cynthia's heavy SUV was positioned directly over it. The first sound was subtle, a faint shift, like earth settling under pressure. Cynthia paused mid-sentence, sensing something she couldn't yet identify. Daniel heard it too. The front tire dipped half an inch. Cynthia instinctively stepped back. "Did you do something to this yard?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. Daniel calmly shook his head. "It's always been soft there." Another shift followed. Neighbors moved a little closer. Phones quietly lifted. The SUV tilted slightly forward. The polished chrome grille angled downward toward the grass. Cynthia reached for her phone, possibly call for a tow, or maybe to document what she already assumed would be someone else's fault. Daniel felt no triumph, only a strange calm. He had asked her not to park there. Twice, the ground compressed further, unable to support the weight pressing into it. A dull crunch echoed beneath the soil. Gasps spread to the small crowd gathering along the curb. The front half of the SUV sank deeper into the lawn. The tire disappeared into the soft earth, as if the ground itself was reclaiming its space. Cynthia stared, stunned, her clipboard hanging forgotten at her side. And Daniel realized this moment would change more than just a patch of grass, because the HOA president had just encountered something beyond her control. Within minutes, the quiet street turned into a scene of disbelief. The SUV's front end rested awkwardly in collapsed soil, its once pristine finish now streaked with mud. Cynthia's composure began to crack. She circled the vehicle, phone to her ear, voice sharp but trembling beneath its authority. Words like liability and property damage drifted through the warm morning air. Daniel stood near his porch steps, hands folded, calm but attentive. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't argued. He had simply asked her not to park there. Neighbors murmured quietly. Some exchanged knowing glances. Others recorded discreetly. A landscaping contractor from 2 houses down approached. Examining the ground, he explained that older irrigation voids could collapse under heavy weight, especially after recent rain. Cynthia's eyes snapped toward Daniel. "You should have warned me," she said. Daniel's voice remained steady. "I asked you to move." Silence followed. For the first time, the authority Cynthia wore like armor seemed fragile, dented not by confrontation, but by consequence. The tow truck was called. HOA board members began arriving, and the quiet morning transformed into something Maplebrook Estates had never seen before. By midday, the street looked like an impromptu town meeting. Board members stood in small groups, flipping through bylaws as if searching for answers between the lines. The tow operator carefully inspected the SUV, explaining that removing it would require caution to avoid further sinking. Every minute felt heavy, stretched by the weight of unspoken tension. Cynthia stood near the sidewalk, her confidence replaced with tight restraint. Her voice softened when she spoke now, stripped of the sharp edge neighbors had grown used to. Daniel answered questions simply, without accusation. He explained the drainage cavity and his request that morning. Several neighbors confirmed hearing him ask her to move. One board member quietly admitted that HOA authority did not allow parking on private lawns without permission. The words lingered. Cynthia looked at the indentation in the grass, then at the faces around her, not hostile, but observant. For years, rules had flowed one way. Today, accountability flowed back. When the SUV was finally pulled free, the damaged lawn remained a shallow scar, but something deeper had shifted. Power once unquestioned now stood examined under the bright afternoon sun, and Maplebrook Estates was beginning to realize that respect could not be forced. It had to be mutual. The following week, envelopes arrived at every home in Maplebrook Estates. Inside was a notice announcing an emergency HOA meeting. Attendance was higher than anyone could remember. Folding chairs filled the clubhouse, voices quiet with anticipation. Cynthia stood at the front. No clipboard, no sunglasses, no rehearse authority. She seemed smaller somehow, more human. She acknowledged the incident. She admitted that parking on private property had been inappropriate. She proposed changes to ensure inspections would respect homeowner boundaries. The room stayed quiet, not tense, but attentive. Daniel sat in the third row, listening, not triumphant, but thoughtful. He had never wanted conflict. He had wanted fairness. A neighbor raised her hand and spoke gently about communication. Another mentioned mutual respect. The discussion shifted from enforcement to community. For the first time, the HOA meeting felt less like authority and more like neighbors shaping the place they shared. Outside, the repaired patch of lawn blended back into green, nearly invisible unless someone knew where to look. But the memory remained, because sometimes change doesn't come through arguments. Sometimes it arrives when the ground beneath certainty gives way. Autumn settled over Maplebrook Estates with quiet grace. Leaves drifted across sidewalks where neighbors now paused to talk instead of simply passing by. Daniel's lawn grew thick and even, the repaired earth stronger than before. Cynthia walked to the neighborhood without a clipboard, stopping to greet residents by name. The SUV incident became a story told softly, less about embarrassment and more about perspective. It marked a moment when authority shifted into accountability, and rules began sharing space with understanding. Daniel never brought up that morning again. He didn't need to. The respect he wanted now showed in small gestures across the street. A shared smile, the absence of unnecessary notices. One evening, Cynthia paused at the edge of his driveway. "Thank you for your patience," she said. Daniel nodded. "We're neighbors first." As the sun dipped below the rooftops, the neighborhood felt different. Not perfect, but balanced. The ground had given way beneath a heavy vehicle, but something stronger had risen in its place. Fairness, humility, and the quiet strength of mutual respect. And that was a final turn in this remarkable HOA story. If you enjoyed the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel.